Okay, so let's dive into this. Imagine you're walking through a market in Tirana, right, in Albania. You look around and bam, 1 second you see someone with these really pale blue eyes. Then, like right next to them, someone with deep olive skin, dark curly hair.
Yeah, it's striking.
It really is. Then maybe someone tall, fair skin walks past, and someone else with rich hazel eyes. It's like this living picture of Europe's history, all its diversity. You'd realize pretty quick that, okay, they share a language, a culture, sure. But the look of Albanians, physically, it's this incredible range. Eye color, hair, skin tone, even how tall they are. Just a real mosaic, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And what's really fascinating here, what your sources really highlight, is that researchers often call Albania one of Europe's, well, compelling genetic crossroads. It's like history has literally stamped itself onto people's features. So today, this deep dive, we're going to explore why this amazing diversity exists. We're pulling from genetics, anthropology, history.
All the angles.
Exactly. Our mission is to really unpack the factors that shaped these unique, varied traits in Albanians. And importantly, what these differences tell us about their, deep history, their identity, their resilience.
That's a great mission. I can already sense how layered this is. And when you talk about visible diversity, I mean, eye color has got to be one of the first things you notice. You might walk in with an idea of what an Albanian looks like, but the reality, well, the data shows it's way more colorful, more complex than just one image. What are the genetic surveys actually saying?
Well, the numbers give us a really interesting snapshot. Across the Balkans, surveys show maybe 50 to 55% of Albanians have brown eyes. Okay, that's pretty standard for Southern Europe. But here's where it gets interesting. Almost 35% have green or hazel eyes.
35%? That seems really high.
It is really high. It's actually one of the highest rates for green and hazel eyes in all of Europe.
Wow. So that means, what, nearly half the population doesn't have brown eyes? Between green, hazel, and blue.
Pretty much, yeah. And add to that, about 10 to 15% have blue eyes. And interestingly, these lighter eyes, the blues, often the greens too, you tend to find them more clustered up in the northern highlands.
They're the mountains.
Exactly. And researchers think this concentration is, well, largely because those areas were pretty isolated for centuries. That isolation allowed specific genetic traits like lighter eyes to just kind of stick around and become more common in those smaller groups, like a natural genetic archive almost.
So this whole palette, it's not just random. It's telling a story of who met whom, basically. My reading of the research suggests the ancient Illyrians, they're usually described as darker-eyed, olive-skinned, right? They were the base layer.
That's the core idea, yes.
Yeah.
The Illyrians form a major genetic component. But then, history happens. You get significant intermarriage over thousands of years. Think about Slavic migrations, for instance. They brought a higher frequency of lighter eyes and hair into the mix. Then later, along the coast especially, you have interactions with Greeks, with Venetians, all adding more threads to that tapestry. It's this constant layering, and you can almost see it geographically. Go up to Shkodër in the north, you're likely to see families with those striking blue eyes, that isolation effect. Then head south, maybe Gjirokastër, and hazel and deep brown eyes become much more the norm, reflecting different historical interactions down there. It's like a living map.
A living map. I like that. And it's not just the eyes, right? You connect this bigger picture. And skin tone also seems to defy any easy label. Broadly Southern European, maybe, but with these really interesting regional twists.
Absolutely. And we have hard data now, like from a 2017 genome-wide study. It found about 60% of Albanians have those medium to light olive tones, very similar to what you'd see in Italy or Greece.
Okay, that fits the Southern European idea.
Right. But then about 25% lean towards lighter, fairer skin. And another distinct 15% show deeper, sort of naturally tanned complexions, even if they aren't out in the sun a lot. And this isn't just about getting a tan. It's, baked into their genetics.
Right. So again, history at play. The sources talk about the Adriatic coast, centuries of Mediterranean trade. That leaves the olive undertones. But up in the mountains, in the north, the lighter complexions are more common. What's the thinking there? Reduced sun?
Yeah, likely a mix of things. Less intense UV exposure at higher altitudes probably plays a role, but also something called genetic drift.
Genetic drift. Remind me.
Sure, it's basically random chance affecting which genes become more common in a population. In smaller, more isolated groups, like in the highlands, Certain traits, like lighter skin, can become more frequent just by chance over generations, not necessarily because they offer a survival advantage.
Got it. So chance and isolation amplify certain looks in certain places.
Exactly. And you're right, this contrast, it really fuels those online debates you see sometimes. Are Albanians more Southern European, more Balkan Slavic? It's a perfect example of how biology gets tangled up with identity, challenging any simple box you try to put them in. It's about looks, yes, but also about who they feel they are in the wider European story.
So skin, eyes, and this layering effect, it just keeps going with hair, doesn't it? The sources show hair diversity perfectly mirroring Albania's position as this crossroads. What's the breakdown?
Spot on. About 65% have dark brown to black hair. Pretty common for the region. But then almost a third, about 30%, are in that lighter brown chestnut range. And then, maybe surprisingly for some, around 5% have naturally blonde shades. Again, more concentrated up north, echoing those other patterns.
Following the same geographic lines and texture, that adds another layer too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Straight hair is dominant, maybe 70% or so.
Yeah.
But wavy textures are really common, especially down south, gives that kind of softer Mediterranean vibe. And then you see curlier types popping up sporadically. Those curls are often linked to really ancient Mediterranean connections, maybe even some Middle Eastern threads from way back, millennia of people moving around.
Wow, so it's like a family photo could show all these different types.
Exactly. And Albanians themselves often talk about that with pride. How one family gathering can have all these different hair colors and textures. It's a kind of natural, everyday celebration of their own diversity. Really shows how these big genetic patterns play out in real lives.
It's amazing. Just the visible traits tell so many stories. But we're going deeper. What about things like height, stature? The data there is pretty remarkable too, putting Albanians among the taller groups in Southern Europe.
It really is. There was an anthropometric study back in 2019, really detailed measurements. It found the average height for Albanian men was about 179 centimeters. That's roughly 5'10.5".
Pretty tall.
Yeah. And for women, around 165 centimeters, so 5'5". That puts them right up there among the taller Southern European populations. Though, it's worth noting, still a bit shorter than their neighbors in Montenegro, who are consistently some of the tallest people globally.
Okay, so what's driving that height? Is it all genes or other factors?
Researchers think it's a mix, really. Both nutrition and genetics seem key. For instance, up in the mountainous north, the traditional diets were often rich in dairy, meat, protein from livestock, right?
Mm-hmm.
And historically, those areas produced really quite tall individuals. You can picture that Highland shepherd image, strong, upright, partly due to generations of good protein and specific genes. Down south, though, diets were historically heavier on grains, different farming, and populations there tended to be slightly shorter on average.
Interesting. Is that gap still there?
It's actually narrowing. As diets become more similar across the country, especially with urbanization, nutrition's getting more consistent, and that height difference is reducing.
Okay, that makes sense. And it's not just height. Facial structure is another piece of this puzzle. The sources mention that distinctive Albanian facial features have been noted for a long time.
They definitely have. Anthropological surveys, especially older ones, often describe features like prominent cheekbones, straight noses, maybe quite angular jawlines, particularly noticeable in the north, sort of strong, almost sculpted features.
Right.
But then, in contrast, you often see rounder facial contours in southern Albanians, a softer look, maybe reflecting more of that Mediterranean coastal influence. And these differences, they actually caused quite a stir academically back in the 20th century. Anthropologists were trying to slot Albanians into these neat categories. You'd hear terms like Dinaric, tall, angular, dark-haired, versus Mediterranean, softer, maybe olive-toned.
Trying to box people in based on looks, how do scientists see that now?
Oh, today, that kind of rigid classification is largely rejected. We understand genetics is way more fluid and complex than that. But the visible diversity in faces, that's still undeniable. And interestingly, that Dinaric look sometimes gets promoted, almost like a brand, as the typical Albanian look internationally.
Really?
Yeah. But lots of Albanians push back on that. They argue, quite rightly, that it ignores the equally authentic, softer, olive-toned look prevalent in the South. So it's not just some dry academic point. It touches on who gets to represent the national image, regional pride. It's about identity.
Wow, yeah. It really shows how every little physical detail carries so much weight, so much history. So let's bring in the hard science to tie this together. Modern DNA research. This is where we get the numbers confirming Albania as this really unique genetic spot, right?
Exactly. This is where genetics really anchors the observations. That 2017 genome-wide study I mentioned, It was groundbreaking. It placed Albanians as one of Europe's most distinct genetic clusters. And get this, it found that about 70% of their genetic makeup traces directly back to the ancient Illyrians.
70%. That's huge. That speaks to incredible continuity.
It's an astonishing level, yeah. It suggests a really deep-rooted ancient lineage. Like the genetic echo of those ancient inhabitants is still incredibly strong today.
But it's not just the ancient roots, as we've been saying. The research shows other influences woven in, too.
Precisely. While that Illyrian core is dominant, it's definitely not the whole story. It's a story of interaction, too. That same study showed about 20–25% of their genetic markers come from Slavic migrations. A huge historical impact right there. And then you find smaller, but still detectable, links to Greeks, Italians, even Turks from the long Ottoman period. So it's this complex layering. And that is why you can easily find someone with dark hair and olive skin and someone with light hair and hazel eyes, sometimes in the very same family, same village. It perfectly reflects both that amazing ancient continuity and the constant mixing from trade, migration, conquest over centuries.
It really feels like this whole question of how Albanians look can be quite sensitive then. It spills over into debates about identity itself, more than just genes.
Oh, absolutely. It's deeply tied into cultural and historical narratives. You have some people, often very nationalistic, who emphasize that Illyrian connection, claiming Albanians are maybe Europe's purest descendants. They stress the unbroken lineage, the unique language, to solidify a distinct identity.
Right, focusing on the uniqueness.
Exactly. But then others argue, look, centuries of mixing Romans, Byzantines, Ottomans for nearly 500 years means there can't be one single Albanian look. For them, the beauty is in the blend, the synthesis of all these influences.
And these aren't just quiet discussions, are they? You mentioned online debates.
Oh, yeah. They get quite heated. You see it all over social media. People posting photos side by side. A northern Highlander with blue eyes next to a southern villager with classic olive skin. And the caption asks, which one is the real Albanian?
Wow. Puts it starkly.
It does. And the point is, it's not just about looks. It's about who gets to define what it means to be Albanian, especially in a region with such a complex history of shifting borders and outside narratives trying to define them. It's a really vital conversation about self-perception.
Okay, so to really feel this, let's move from the stats for a moment. You mentioned sensory glimpses. Painting a picture. Like imagine a wedding in Tirana.
Right. Picture it. A big, lively Albanian wedding. Music, dancing, families everywhere. And you see the groom, maybe he's tall, jet black hair, but striking pale blue eyes. And he's laughing with his cousin, who's got that warm olive skin and a mass of chestnut curls. They share the same language, the same traditions, the same family history. But they look so different. It's a beautiful living example of that shared heritage encompassing all this visual variety.
Yeah, you can really picture that. Or maybe shift the scene up to a remote mountain village, like Theth.
Imagine that, high up in the Albanian Alps. Maybe kids running barefoot on old stone paths. And you notice their complexions are strikingly light, maybe blonde streaks in their hair catching the sun. These aren't visiting tourists. These are local kids. Their families have been there for centuries. It's like a living snapshot of how that geographic isolation preserved and maybe even amplified rarer traits. These beautiful, kind of unexpected genetic footnotes in the bigger story. It makes history and geography feel very real, very human.
It's so clear that appearance for Albanians hasn't just been about genetics. It's been political, it's been about survival, then pride, and now maybe something else.
Definitely. Think about the Ottoman centuries. Blending in, maybe adopting certain ways of dressing or acting could be crucial for navigating daily life, for survival even. Identity and appearance were maybe more fluid then. Then jump to the 20th century, nation-building time. Nationalist leaders often promoted a specific Illyrian look, usually that tall, dark, angular image, as a symbol of national pride, a way to say, we are distinct, we are ancient.
A symbol of uniqueness. And now, what's the feeling today?
Today, there seems to be this really interesting evolution, especially among younger generations. There's more of an embrace of the diversity itself, celebrating the very fact that no single stereotype fits. Seeing the varied looks not as confusing, but as proof of a rich, complex history. And this whole emotional journey from survival through nationalist pride to this modern embrace of diversity, it kind of mirrors Albania's own path as a nation, doesn't it? It's a country that's faced incredible divisions, pressures, but always held on to a core sense of identity That variety of faces, it's not a flaw. It's actually proof of their resilience, their adaptability through time.
So pulling this all together after this deep dive into your sources, what makes Albanians look so different? It seems to be this incredible blend, this fusion of deep ancient roots combined with centuries of movement, interaction, mixing. You get eyes from deep brown to icy blue, skin from classic olive to fair, heights challenging Northern Europe, all carrying these echoes of history.
Exactly. Albania really is like a living museum of human variation. It's where the genetic data, the history books, the anthropology, all comes together right there in people's faces. The land itself has played this double role, right? Open coasts and valleys inviting trade, migration, invasion, but also these imposing mountains, creating pockets of isolation that preserve diversity.
So maybe the next time you meet an Albanian, whether it's in New York or London or right there in Tirana, take a moment, really see the details, maybe those sharp cheekbones or the unexpected flash of green eyes, that mix of fair and olive skin in the same family. Because each face carries whispers of Illyrians, Romans, Slavs, Ottomans. Each one kind of defies any simple label, and perhaps that's the real takeaway here. Albania's people don't look so different in spite of their turbulent history. They look so different because of it.
Precisely. And that complex, resilient story reflected in their faces is truly something remarkable to witness.